Threshold mode is a new feature in Cascade Surgical Studio which allows efficient, simple, and even automatic detection of triggered EMG threshold responses. To add a threshold mode to the procedure setup, choose the Modes page and click the plus sign to add a new mode. On the left, choose Threshold and click OK. Add the desired muscles to the mode from the channels on the left. By default, the required amplitude to detect a threshold response is set to 25 microvolts. This can be changed to any value. Note that choosing an extremely low value may result in false low threshold detection. The bottom left menu is Threshold General Settings. Run mode can be set to manual, in which the user will directly control stimulus intensity, or automatic, in which the program will ramp up the stimulus until a threshold response is detected. Many other settings behave just like in EMG modes, such as sweep, sweep delay, auto store behavior, and removing EMG stim artifact. Auto store limiter reduces the number of stored traces if the stimulus is maintained after a threshold is reached. By default, this is set to a 30% deviation, so a new threshold will not be stored unless the value changes by 30% from the previously stored threshold. New thresholds will also be stored if the site of the response changes to a new muscle, or the stimulation site is changed. Threshold window start and end chooses the time frame for the program to look for a threshold response. Start is especially useful to reduce the impact of stim artifact on the detection algorithm. Display threshold sets the values for the intensity of red, yellow, and green threshold responses. Simply drag the black bars to choose appropriate values for the intended procedure. Any thresholds to the left of the first bar will be red, between the bars will be yellow, and to the right of the second bar will be green. Sound tones can be assigned for auditory feedback during threshold detection. This can be set to only on threshold detection when stimulus contact is made, a continuous tone during stimulus contact, and a tone if stimulus contact is lost. The tones for red, yellow, and green responses are customizable above in the Threshold Channels menu, directly below the channels themselves. The bottom right menu is Threshold Stimulus Settings. These settings are very similar to typical triggered EMG stimulus settings. Notable settings are the initial and maximum intensities. These determine where the program will begin stimulating, usually 0 milliamps, and the maximum value the program will use for stimulation. These settings should be made appropriate for the stimulation site. Also note that the threshold mode stimulator must be set to an output mapped as probe 1. This can be done in the channel setup in the Outputs tab. After setup is complete, add the threshold window to a view. The dotted lines on each channel are threshold window start, threshold window end, and threshold amplitude. Start and end times can be adjusted only for all channels at once. Amplitude can be adjusted for all channels by default, or by a single channel by holding Shift while dragging. The mode controls are used to control the stimulus and choose the surgical site. The surgical site dropdown starts with the spinal nerve roots listed from C1 to S5 alternating left and right. Any other site can also be used, including custom sites. The other controls are similar to triggered EMG controls. Automatic and manual mode can be changed here as well. For pedicle screw or other spinal nerve root stimulation, the anatomical spine view may be useful. In the threshold window, click the gear at the top right. Check the Show Anatomical Spine box. Choose a posterior or anterior view and the appropriate regions of the spine to display. The surgical site may now be chosen by simply clicking on the correct level on the anatomical spine. To begin threshold stimulation, click the Start button on the mode controls. If using automatic mode, the program will begin stimulation at the level determined in the threshold stimulus settings and will increase until a threshold or maximum value is reached. If using manual mode, adjust the stimulus intensity until a threshold response is obtained. The threshold intensity is displayed at the top left of the threshold window. The site on the anatomical spine will also change colors to reflect whether the response was in the red, yellow, or green ranges. If no threshold is obtained at the maximum stimulus intensity, the color will not change, and the data must be stored manually by clicking the Save button in the mode controls. Threshold results can be reviewed by clicking the gear icon in the threshold window and selecting the Review tab. This will display a table of each stimulus with time, intensity, channel for detected response, and surgical site. Clicking on a trial will show the stored response below the table. A surgeon view is also available by clicking on the gear icon in the threshold window. This view is similar to the main threshold view, but the surgeon does not see the intensity searching bar on the left side, only a much larger threshold result indicator. If an additional monitor in view of the surgeon is available and connected, this window can be dragged outside the main Surgical Studio program window and placed on the surgeon's monitor.